This series of lectures by Harry Cook continues with a further examination of karate kata and the applications that they contain so that they can be better understood and applied. Many exponents develop high levels of physical skill as a result of their long-term study of karate, yet have difficulty in using what they have learnt effectively and spontaneously. As will be seen, if the emphasis of training is changed from competition to combat, and the concepts shown in this series of programs applied, a quantum leap forward in terms of combat effectiveness will result. Skill without knowledge is nothing, as the old saying reminds us. A strong, intelligent fighter will always prevail.
If we look at the basic blocks in Shotokan, or actually any style for that matter, but certainly in Shotokan, what we tend to see is the rising block and the outside block and the inside block and the Gidambarai are performed in Zenku Tsudachi, front stance. So the weight is forwards, and it's clearly the implication is that you're driving into the attack, you're pushing this technique in. And yet back stance is performed with the weight shifting backwards and the hand on the soigetsu, solar plexus, mizuwachi, this posture. This has always puzzled me. I've never understood why it should be so, until you realize that what I'm trying to do is to bring the opponent towards me, to make the hand strike effective. I don't actually believe that this part is the block. So for example, Brian, please, if you would. If something simple is, let's say for example, he's grabbed me here, this feeling, and I lean backwards. Immediately, I've got him off balance. This makes his upper body vulnerable, this feeling. So if we consider this in terms of a block or a strike or this kind of thing, for example, let's say this hand is an attack and I block. Now this finger could be attacking the eyes, throat, or whatever, or just a handoff. If I now catch and bring him down, this hand will strike. And as it happens, this side of the neck we have the phrenic nerve, and on this side we have the vagus. Both of those areas are susceptible to attack. The vagus, if you hit it very hard, can create a thing called vagal inhibition. This actually stops the heart. It's extremely dangerous. So please, when you practice this, do not strike hard anywhere around this area. Do it reasonably gently. On this side of the neck, on the phrenic controls the diaphragm to a large degree. There is also a branch of the vagus, and there are pressure receptors and various other organs, various other things we'll leave alone at the moment, but they're all susceptible to damage. If you strike those areas, you will cause damage. So in a self-defense sense, I want to open the neck up. And one of the easy ways is to pull that feeling there. So by pulling and bringing it up the center, I can strike in this way. Now as a possible follow-up between the techniques, I can put an arm lever on this way and switch and go the other side. So in both cases, I'm setting up the neck. The first one, I'm coming back, pull down to strike. Second, this way, bang. If he's sharp enough and he drops his head in to protect his neck, it doesn't matter because you're going to come straight in the bridge of the nose, this way. Now obviously, knife hand block features in many kata. So we have the obvious Heian Shodan, we have that classical 4-block sequence, which you see. Kankudai, same. You find this kind of thing, Sochin, these kind of techniques are appearing again and again and again. So you can just apply that kind of logic to all of the kata. As long as your opponent is taken off balance, you control the hand. This rear hand is controlled here, this way. We can also, of course, naturally practice it to the outside the same way, that way. Then we still have this idea of the anvil and the hammer. One hand controls, one hand strikes. Really, it's a matter of imagination after that. You can find lots of different ways to use this. So again, please, what I'd like you to practice is to the inside and outside, okay? So rub, you attack. Yep. Then I go inside, catch, boom, and out to the outside. Same hand attack, but block to the other way. That's it. Yep. Slap block, catch, bang. Good. Okay. This time go to the outside and then switch and try the other hand. So is that to be? Okay. Inside, 1. Catch the arm, lift him up, come through, and 2. Good. And in that kind of situation, on the second one, after we've made the first technique, here, this one, although we can do it as a strike, it could also be a pull. You can see it this way, as a pull. That way. Okay. Loose. So while knife hand block, using the edge of the forearm or the hand, is a relatively common technique in Shotokan, a less common technique is what is normally called Mawashiyuki. Now, Mawashiyuki is basically 2 interlocked circles. One hand circles one way, one hand circles the other. And they interlock, and as they interlock, they parry, trap, and catch. If we look at Shotokan from, say, the 1930s, that is in Funakoshi Sensei's books, or the small amount of video which is available, film footage which is available, you can see the Mawashiyuki is very like Okinawan systems. But if we look at maybe after the Second World War, what we tend to see, and I'm generalizing here, and there are a few exceptions, but what we tend to see is the movements have become a little more straight. That is, the circles, the circular motion has been made more linear or made smaller. This is probably done for aesthetic reasons. The problem with that is you lose the circularity and therefore you lose the potential for power. So if we look at a Mawashiyuki or roundhouse block this way, we are covering this area and this area. So what you've got is like a figure of 8 in front of your body, or 2 interlocked circles in front of your body. Of course, we find Mawashiyuki in Shotokan. We find it in Unsu, at the end of Unsu, where you've dropped, you stand up, Mawashiyuki, and then you turn, rising block, reverse punch. And we find it in Nijushi Ho at the end. Interestingly enough, both kata, that is Unsu and Nijushi Ho, historically seem to come from Aragaki Seisho, who is an important figure in the history of karate, but is a relatively shadowy figure. It may very well be that the 2 katas came into Shotokan through Funakoshi's association with the Kenyukai in Okinawa. It's interesting, for example, that Nijushi Ho and Unsu are found in Mabuni Sensei's group, the Shitoryu, and in Shotokan, and the Wadaryu, certainly Niseishi is, but some of the main Shorin-ryu styles don't have it, although they have something equivalent in terms of a block. Shorin-ryu styles, which are the mother, if you like, the ancestor of Shotokan, feature these techniques quite extensively. But the tendency to make Shotokan techniques linear has led to these techniques becoming, if you like, kata technique. That is, they're taught as part of kata, but very rarely are they taught outside the kata, which is a pity because they can be quite effective in many ways. So for example, Brian, please. If we take the basic Mawashiyuki, say for example from a grip, there. Now again, we'll go back to these basic ideas. If he's gripped me, the danger lies on his head and his knees. So if we use Mawashiyuki as a feeling, this way, immediately I put a wall up here so his head's safe. I can keep the head away. Similarly with his balance, if he tries to lift the leg, I can push him, take his balance. So if we start this feeling here, then we come round there. Now we can counter-attack this way, this way. If we then follow through with the hands, we have it as a throw. Now these techniques, you will find, or some version of that technique, you will find extensively in Goju-ryu and in Uechi-ryu as Wauki. But it's the same technique effectively, it's roundhouse block. That is the circular block intercepting and redirecting an incoming force. So once again, if we come from here, we can come inside. If this grip is quite strong, there, I can use that arm to break that grip. This can be then redirected into a throw, that way. Another way to use the same technique would be, say, a punch is moving in, second punch comes to the body there, and we turn it inside, that way. A way to make this slightly more efficient would be to stand on the foot and throw. So when he goes, the ankle is damaged. I won't let the ankle move, but the body weight falls. So again, if we bring the students in, please. Good. So, what I'd like you to do is grab. So we'll go for a double grip, okay? And just basic washing, okay? So inside turn and push away, or inside turn and knee into the throw, okay? So for example, the same at the end of Gekisai Dai-ni. So in Gekisai Dai-ni, where we've moved this way and then this way, that kind of feeling, okay? So try. Over, good. So it's a simple break free, good. And this time, add on to the throw, make the throw. So this time, inside. Okay, so I want this hand to dip this way. Right? Dip, down, strike. So I've got here, here, strike. Now, finish. There. And push. Okay, understand? Gently. That's it. Good. Back up. And bow. Good. Now, with these circular motions, we can begin to look a little more at the history. Southern Chinese boxing styles that came into Okinawa and from Okinawa to Japan made use of 4 basic principles, which we translate as float, sink, swallow, and spit. All right? Now, float, for example, would be anything which breaks the root. So a technique where I strangle down and I lever in and up so the root is broken. Now I'm not taking the strength from the shoulders, but because there's no contact with the ground, his balance is gone. Therefore his strength doesn't apply. Sink would be the opposite, which is to take him down and maybe make a throw from there. Swallow is to absorb. And spit is to push away. Okay. When we think in terms of application, especially with the more advanced kata, especially with locks and throws and takedowns, you need to consider those principles. And the classic example of the 4 principles in action would be in the kata Shisochin, where we've gone float, sink, swallow, spit. Okay. As a matter of, just as it happens, the last 2 characters, swallow and spit, is where the name Goju-ryu came from. It doesn't literally mean to physically ingest and physically expel something, but some of the translations of the text seem to imply that. One classic is something, was it the way it is hard and soft, drinking and vomiting or something, or swallowing and vomiting. Very strange translation. Doesn't mean that at all. So if we take those four ideas there and you apply them to your kata, you will begin to discover more locks and more takedowns. But that's for your own training. That's a thing you should continue yourself many, many, many times, using these ideas to say, well, how does these techniques fit into this way? Okay. So again, for example, you might think up, there's float, sink. Okay. This way, punch comes in, there, spit. So these are ways of applying these theories, these ideas to your kata. Okay, that's a never-ending study that continue for all of your training, all of your life. Gichin Funakoshi said that his teaching, his method, was a fusion between the 2 mainstreams of Okinawan karate, which was Shorin-ryu and Shorei. Now Shorin-ryu we can clearly identify because as a style it still exists, or as a group of related sub-styles it exists. Shorei, on the other hand, is a little difficult to identify exactly what he meant by that. But if we accept the modern understanding of this, then we would be looking at things like Goju-ryu and Uechi-ryu, i.e. Nahate systems. The Nahate systems have their own kata, obviously, such as Seipai, Sanchin, Keksaichi, Keksai-ni, Saifa, Seonshin, and so forth, and the Goju-ryu kata, some of which are traditional, the Uechi-ryu kata, some of which are traditional, such as Sansei-ryu, Sanchin, Seizan, and the more modern kata, such as Seizan Dai-ni, and so forth. These kata all have arm locks and wrist locks and so on found within their structures. And the classic example in Goju-ryu, for example, might be Seonshin, which I suppose would be something like the Basai Dai of Goju-ryu, if you like. It's the kata which is seen to be typical of the style, especially at about brown belt, maybe first dan level, somewhere about there. Now in Seonshin, when we start the kata, we see this movement in the form. The hands scoop and pull. So we have something like this kind of movement, where we rotate down, we scoop, we catch. And this technique has often been taught or interpreted or demonstrated in this way. Brian, please. So, get on, Brian. Okay. Where it's something like a punch is coming in, and I block, catch, and I spear hand. Okay. Now again, this is possible, but to use a spear hand against ribs, even kidney, even the side of the body where the muscle is relatively light, with unprepared hands, it would be very dangerous. You'd probably break your fingers. Yabu warned against this. Kenso Yabu warned against people practicing open hand kata if the fingers and hands weren't strengthened. So we could look at this in a different way. We can see the same technique in a different way. Say, for example, from a grip. Now again, if I'm being gripped, what I'm looking at in terms of his attack, the dangerous areas, the head and the knee. So what I can look at is this. I can drop, catch on the wrist, bring him down. Now this could be an attack of the eyes, or better would be to turn the head this way, there, and make the throw there. So this turning action makes the throw. That's quite reasonable to see it that way. Okay? So we'll get the students to practice that, please. Okay? So what I'd like to do is opening technique from Seonshin. Okay? Scoop catch, so on the wrist, and either as a spear hand, or spear hand followed by takedown. Very soft and easy, please. Just a couple of times. That's it. And pull. That's it. Good. Okay, try again. Good. Now take him down. Good. Thank you. Good. Right. Brian, please. A similar idea, similar kind of principle we can find following on from that within the same kata is this technique, which you see as part of a sequence in the kata. It's done like this: one, hit, strike, and often we see this taught as a reinforced block, stepping behind, strike down to the groin or possibly the face or stomach. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly valid technique. But we can see it in a slightly different way. We could see it, for example, punch comes in, I hit this way. Okay? I shake him onto the elbow. Next, I reach, catch, and crank on the neck. So if we just turn, make it nice and easy to observe. Okay, off the strike, here, this feeling, there, this way. Now again, as we did with Heian Sandan, when we had the head in there, we cannot take this to the logical completion point. If we do, then his neck will snap or be damaged. So for practicing, we have to stop halfway. We can only this way, here, this technique. And for application, it's important to get the head jammed into the armpit. This would be levering against the head. A variation on that might be to actually come up the front and on the windpipe to take the air away. As a strangle on the neck, this way. Again, the arm would be making this circular movement to completion. Okay. And again, I'd like to practice it just Robert's attack, block, punch, elbow into the headlock. Okay. Punch and then elbow, good, and then across and crank the head, turn it. Okay, and relax. So you've got a nice neck lock. I'd like you to concentrate a little bit more. Boom, boom. Turn the head more this way, this way. So what we're trying to do is to have his head on an angle. So we turn this way. Try again. So the swing comes in. Punch, straight to the elbow, good. Straight up, turn his head inside. That's better, good. And then use this arm to reinforce your hand. And push up. Good. Stop. Good. Thank you. Right. Now a third way of seeing a very similar technique would be in the Kata Sansei Ryu, where we have this sequence. And we finish with this technique. So for example, technique, maybe somebody trying to grab the hair or whatever, and I slip it. Now what I'm trying to do is this, that way. Unfortunately, he stops me, there. So we end up in a kind of stalemate. Now, what I want to do is to slip here, slip past and hit this feeling. So we make a strong boom this way. Next, I'm going to bar down, reach and pull this way. So as this hand pushes down, this hand pushes, or pulls rather, up. This could be again the hair, this way. Okay. This is Goju Ryu, so people say, well, very nice, but what's that got to do with Shotokan? Well again, similar movements could be found in Shotokan Kata. For a simple example, it might be something like Teki Shodan, where the attacks come in here, this way, that feeling. And in the Kata where I'd be going a double, open, elbow, down, here. So I've done this feeling. The Shotokan techniques are more straight, if you like. They've been made linear. Goju preserved the curves. But the underlying structure is not that dissimilar. So, students, please. Okay, so Sansei Ryu. What I'd like you to practice is this. The attack comes through, slip the attack. Okay, catch. Moving through with an elbow strike which is covered, jammed or blocked. Okay, now this hand will deflect across the body, leaving him open. You will attack which any open or vulnerable target. It could be the body, could be the groin, could be the face, throat. Okay, so from there, this way. Okay. Next, this back arm rolled down. So the feeling with this arm is you're pushing into the floor. Fingers point to the floor. This reach over, take and pull up. So as we push down with one, we pull up with another. If you wish, you could just pull up with the hair. Okay, this way. Now some people don't like to reach down and go for the face in case somebody bites the fingers. So being bitten is always possible in a real fight. So this may be a little dangerous. Although the leverage is better on the jaw, you may take a slight chance of getting your fingers bitten. So if the hair is available, use the hair, pull the hair up. Okay, so we'll do it soft. Okay, slowly. So punch comes in, slip. Good, catch an elbow, but side elbow. Good. Now deflect to the butt arm, punch the body first. Good. Fold, across, lock the head and bring him up and down. Good. Let's try that again, all right? So what we'll be looking for is as he comes in, one, could be this hand, shifting, okay? Or here, this way. Now I'm taking him down here, so there. Next, clear the hand away. And here, this way. Bring it down. So I'm pushing down on the elbow joint here. here. But if you're worried about a bite, then just there. So we bring the head up and this way. So again, this joint, just relax. We're pushing over. Okay? Very similar in Shotokan. Very similar technique, this movement, where you could see it done this way on, like this, here. This kind of a feeling, pulling the hand across, this way, okay? So, although it's a Goju application in this particular context, there are Shotokan kata with almost identical techniques in, where you're pulling this way. Here. This kind of movement, okay? So, try that. So once again, comes in, deflect, good. Elbow, good. Down, punch. Roll him down. Good. Go for the neck. Pull. Good. And what you have to remember is, yeah, to weaken inside here. There, weaken. In there. So go for where the arm joins, this way. Don't here or too high, but right in the center, so the arm is bent. Then you hit. Now with a bit of luck here, maybe use hip bone kind of. Boom. There, air comes out. Okay. Once you hear that noise, it's like a balloon goes down. At this point, the arm will bend quite easily. There, and this gives you control. Okay. Better. Down, hit. Good. Down, that's better. Pull the head. Gosh, very good. Good. One feature of Goju-ryu is performing the kata as a two-man set, or performing some of the katas as two-man sets. In the 1930s, late 1930s, early 1940s, Choji Miyagi and Shoshi Nagamine sensei got together and produced two kata, Gekisai Ich, Gekisai Ni. These are fusions of Shurite and Nahate technique. These were intended to be Kihon kata or basic kata taught within the dojos in Okinawa pretty much to people of almost any style, as a kind of fundamental kata form which you could learn it from any teacher and therefore go to any dojo and have something you could all practice together. These katas are known as Gekisai, so Gekisai Ich and Gekisai Ni. It's believed it was originally intended to produce 5. But unfortunately 5, as far as we know, were never produced. Taguchi Sensei, Sakichi Taguchi Sensei, has produced a set of kata Keki Ha, which, as far as he's concerned, do form a complete set, i.e. he did what Choji Miyagi Sensei wanted. Maybe that's the case, maybe not, I don't know. But anyway, they do exist and are quite valuable kata in many ways. One feature of the Gekisai kata is it can be performed as a complete set with a partner, very like the old Chinese forms, where an attacker and defender would do both sides of the kata, or the whole kata is performed with a partner as a flowing sequence. So Gekisai Daiichi is as it were, the introduction to this way of training, and is performed this way. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, it's better, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and bow. Okay, so once again, okay, Goranash straight through, no stop, okay, but slow down, take your time, take your time. Concentrate on these points, eye contact, and breathing. Now don't show your breath, not so you don't get this kind of a feel in the movement. Okay, hide your breath, keep eye contact and control your hip height. Okay, so power here, power there. Okay, so Gekisai Bunkai, begin. Okay. Now, don't forget the last part. This last piece should be a punch, not just a shove, okay? But for training purposes, push. We can see the last part here. There's various different ways that this is taught. Sometimes you see it like this. Both hands break free and strike. Sometimes as a hold. The most painful way, where you've got to be very careful with practice, is to regard this bit here as the catch and go on the flesh and pull in. But sometimes just hold the gi this way. There. So this simulates holding the flesh. But to grab the flesh, to come inside and grab on the bicep continuously can be very, very painful for the partner. So when you've come this way, catch, catch, hold, and this way. So you've got to feel there. So when you make the hit, there. Grab, flesh, hit, and boom. Okay? But that, you must be centered. This feeling. So whole body, strike. Whole body, strike. Yes? Good. Using Gekisai as a model, it's perfectly possible to create a set of bunkai, drills, call it what you will, for the Shotokan Kata. Heian Shodan actually lends itself to this very well. So one way we can look at Heian Shodan is to consider performing the kata as a two-man set. When we do this, we adopt the following parameters. If it's a block, we move backwards. If it's an attack, we move forwards. And as a basic way of analysing the kata, we just follow that basic pattern. Now, the version we're going to show you now, I made this up. Okay? This is, as it were, the kind of introductory version, where it's performed on a straight line. Once the students become reasonably skillful on the straight line, they begin to change the angles, and they begin to move off the angle all the time. So the sequence is fixed, but the angles aren't necessarily fixed points. This takes time to develop. You've got to improve your breathing, your timing, your speed, your power, your perception, all those kind of things. So this is the introductory level. This is where we would begin. This is not where we would end up. Okay, so once again, please. So Heian Shodan Bunkai, to my count, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Watch your feet. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shot! Yeah, mate. Right. One more time. Right. Ready, and begin. And bow. That's better. Good. Now, key point. Relax for a second. Okay. When we make this, as you get better, as you improve in the sequence, what we begin to play with is the distance and the eye. So, where we begin with big movement like this, later what begins to happen is this. We keep close. So the attacks become this kind of distance, okay? We always stay very close, okay? Or if it's here, there. So I come back in, it's there. Then here, and I move. And she lunges in and I move. Then we back, move. Okay? So we begin to close the distance down. Once we close the distance down, we then have to use more tai sabaki. We have to use more body motion. So as first attack's coming through here, if I try and hold my ground and simply block, maybe I'll get caught. So as she attacks, I have to move away. Then I have to dash in. And my partner has to move back in the same way. Okay, so the distance becomes critical. Once the sequence is established, It's the control of the distance which makes a lot of difference to be an effective technique or purely a visual thing. It must work by controlling the distance. This means the stance must be correct and therefore the hip action must be correct. But not simply being judged by its visual performance, by its gymnastic aspects. It's judged by whether or not the technique can be deflected and exposing the target of the partner, of the opponent. Only when the target becomes fully available do we understand that the kata is beginning to work. Only then does the self-defense aspects begin to make sense. Now in the format we've seen, we're using karate technique against karate technique. And actually that's, in a sense, not fully correct. It's a kind of halfway house between, as you should say, sport karate and actual self-defense. What should happen later is we begin to use more natural technique, shall we say, on the part of the attacker. That is a non-karate style technique, where the attacker wouldn't do a front kick or a basic punch, but would lunge and kick with like a football type kick, this kind of thing. We have to move towards that in our training a little bit. But that's a more advanced form of training. This is an introduction. This is the beginning way to understand kata bunkai. Heian Godan and Kankudai and a number of other kata contain an interesting technique, which is often said to be a spear hand to the groin while parrying a punch, which leads us into Manji no Kamai, this high-low block, which is sometimes done in some styles this way. And the usual way this is seen is something like this. Brian, please. So, get on, Brian. We're often considered to be some kind of straight attack to the face, which is parried, and then I move in, catch, and block. Or it's seen this way. This way, I move in, and then I come back. Now the problem with this is, from my perspective, is, punch again please, is, well, irrespective of which side I enter, the upper body is exposed to a counter-attack. It's very, very difficult for me to do a decent block from this position. Even if I've hit, you could still get a strike in before I go down. Now by a curious accident of fate, this technique is covered in fighting manuals from Europe in the 15th and 16th centuries. And we also find it in Chinese sources, Japanese karate, Okinawan karate, and various other martial arts throughout the world, where they understand the technique to be something like this. If we assume, for example, as the Europeans did in the 16th century, that we're dealing with a straight knife thrust from something like a stiletto or a thin-bladed weapon, which is a thrusting weapon, rather than a slash. If the attack's coming in here, I slip to the side, move behind, grasp. This hand controls either the arm or the head. And what I'm going to do now is to lift and throw face first into the floor, this way. By doing it this way, I use his body mechanics, my opponent's body mechanics, to my advantage. That is, it's very easy to bend the body this way. It's quite difficult to bend the body that way. If I've grasped and pulled, the instinct is to fall down. If I assist that falling down by pushing down on the neck at the same time, it makes it that much easier for me, and it prevents him striking me in the face because I'm not in the line of his fists, and his hands are traveling towards the floor to protect his face from smashing into the ground. So again, in terms of riai, doing this technique from the side or from behind is more efficient than standing from the front this way. Although this may look more dramatic, the danger is I'm exposed to attack. So again, please. So, I'd like you to practice basic attack, okay? Block, go around the side, behind, catch, and make the throw, okay? Good. Okay, one more time. Good. I'm back. Another Kata, one of my favourites as it happens, is the Kata MP, flying swallow. MP begins with a very strange technique. We start from here and we move across to the side with the hand dropping on the chest. Again, we can consider this as a lever or a break from a grip. If I've been gripped, I have to assume that's the danger hand again. So again, what I want to do is to move the body away, but maybe this time the attack's quite strong. He's quite strong here. So to move away is, I can move the body, but it's a little difficult to escape. So what I do is I hit, and at the same time twist this way. Then I drop down, there, that way. Now from here, of course, it's simple. You can counter-attack many different ways, this way. And I've got the control on the movement. So we can see this a number of different ways. This way, here, there. So once again, what I'd like you to do, attack by grab. Now of course, which is the danger hand? This one. Good. We're assuming, for purpose of argument, that you can't escape easily in that direction. So what you must now do is to attack this elbow. So from here, reach, catch, and down. And down. Good. Try again. Good. Good. We can look at Basai Dai. Basai Dai has again a similar movement, which is a shift of the body weight. So in the kata, usually from here is to move and there, followed by kick and stamp. Brian, please. So again, I can assume this grip. If he's grabbed me there, this is the side to worry about. So naturally, I want to go here. This is my natural escape side. So there, this way. Next, I'll kick that feeling. To make this technique useful, what I need to do is to make his arm parallel to the floor, or between our bodies. Lock this hand, push my hip through, and push down. There. By pushing him down, I immediately make 3 points to the ground. His feet, one hand. This, of course, could simply be a straight attack, or can be preparation to kick in this way. We kick into the joint, through, slow him down, stop him. Some people say, well, he's too strong, I can't move the hand. Hit, this way. So we open by a break, boom, or this way, to open. If the body is strong, you, this way. Weakens it. Slap first, then strike. So same feeling, there. Then trap and this way. Okay, thank you. So from Basai Dai, okay? So we go from a wrist grab. Now we'll start just simply move off to the side, catch, trap, roll, push down. Knee up, kick. Okay, now, not so bad, except not here, move there. Okay, so the arm is straight now, this way. Okay. By taking the arm to this position and pushing down, the lever on the wrist and elbow is quite painful. By leaving the hand full stretch, difficult, and he'll escape. Okay, so enter there, push it into his face, push down, come up, and kick. Okay, be careful on the wrist and the kick. Okay, slowly, push through. Better, knee up, kick. Good. Okay, one more time, please. Trap your own wrist. Right, make sure I don't want this hand to escape. Once he's in there, it's like a spider coming into a web. He's entered the web. I don't want that hand to escape. When I go like this, he pulls his hand away. Now, the problem is, stay here, stay in. He escapes. But that hand is still ready to hit me. And any defense I've got is secondary to his attack. Once he's entered my web, he's mine. Okay? So once they enter, once they come into that space, once they bridge that line there, anything enters here, you must begin to control it. Okay? In this particular case, we are there. And of course, while we're doing this now, we're doing real slow. Okay, we're doing it in a very civilized manner. What you should really do is slam it down so hard that your arm feels like it's going to break. In fact, you should drive the hand to the floor faster than he can bend down. But not yet. Okay? For practice purposes, don't do that. Okay? So try again, slowly. Yes! Like that. Correct. Cipher. Okay. In cipher, we can use a circular motion. This time blending with the attack. So the attack comes in as a swing. I meet the swing and take him round this way. There. Okay? Or we go from the other side, just so you can see the other way. As the attack comes in, I don't stop and then try and attack because center line's open. As he moves, I inside, there, that way, and counter attack. Okay. So what I want you to think about now isn't strength. It's not strength. It's the blending of the motion. So as the attack comes in, you go with it and you spiral around each other. Okay. So as the attack comes in, from here, okay, imagine that's just swinging the hand this way. There. Okay. So what I'm going to do is, as he comes, is just to move inside there. And what I'm looking for, ideally, is to catch between his shoulder and elbow. So we land on the bicep and use your forearm, that feeling there. This meets the technique. And then we drive down. So in cipher, for example, we use the technique from here, there. Okay? So very soft. This has to be from the hips, not from the shoulders, okay? So it's this feeling. Use your hips. So. Good. Right, let's try one more. Just easy, yeah, soft flow. Good. So far, we've looked at most of the defenses against hand attacks, which are probably the most common. However, that doesn't mean they're the only kind of attacks you can face in the street. Favorite attack would be to use the foot in a swing, like a kick, but not a karate style kick where we would chamber and snap, but more like a swing, like a big boot. Now, of course, somebody could be wearing just that, big boots. Classical kata have some defenses against this kind of attack. In particular, one I like is in the kata seipai, where, Brian, please. We consider the situation that he would swing and attack, something like this. This is the obvious target. Okay. So, as the kick would come in, I would move to the side, scoop it. Now, of course, there's the danger to me. So what I must do immediately is there. Now I can counter-attack with a punch. I can punch. I can peisho. I can go for the eye. I can go to the body, whichever. Or ipponken to the body, this way. Immediately, I can follow up. Now, on the shin, I put a lever on. There. Open, trap, over, finish. If I wish, stamp or stamp. This way. That technique we find at this point in the kata. There. This movement. It's this rolling action. We can interpret many different ways. We've chosen in this particular situation to see this as a lever to the joint. That way. Okay. So, students, please. Good. So what I want you to do is, in a sense, to forget that you know any karate at all. Yes. Okay. I want you to attack with a kind of football type swing. This we now assume is a non-karateka, non-martial artist, but very confident and very aggressive. So what you must do is to move inside the kick, and as you catch the leg, counter-attack straight away. So your counter must go immediately to the target. So you catch from up, catch, okay, boom, to the target. Understand? Okay, then drop down, roll, step in. As they go down, control the leg, step in, back in, okay? So gently. Good. On the leg. Now, your forearm, now roll your hands. Roll, not push down, roll. Once again. Once again. Give me your leg. Yeah. Hands meet, okay, this way. So the outer edge of my hand is there, and this motion. See, this way, no problem. The moment I lock and press, starts to, now I hold there. Pressing it by itself is not enough. If I just push down, it's not enough. If I rotate the arm, there. You understand? So the motion must be rotation. Pull. This part of the arm slides down the leg, rolls on the leg. Okay? Try. Gently. Good. Don't lock your fingers. Grip. Now, scoop. Roll it and take it down. Now you're letting him out. Here. Better. That's it. Good. Finish him. Good. Try again. Just put the leg in there for a second, if you would.
So just do the leg.
Yeah. Now. That's it. That's it. Moving towards him as you do so. Push him down. So. Correct. Very good. That's it. Okay. So the feeling must be on the inside of the leg there. There. That's where you attack. Okay? Right? Once again, give me your leg. From here. There. Just to the inside of the shin bone there. So you would hit, we would drop, and we would press. If I roll the leg slightly and then press, it just makes it a little more interesting. Okay? So that should slam in. It should come in very hard. We can't now. For obvious reasons, it's quite painful. A variation which we can't practice with any great pressure is this. Where the kick attacks, this feeling, and we strike with the elbow. You come in this way. This would be very similar to the strike in Shotokan. Okay, striking across the elbow, across the shin. But I prefer the seipai feeling this way. One more time, please. That's better, good. Good.
In part 3 of this series, we will examine methods of training with equipment that improves strength, speed, impact and reaction time. Training of this type was, until the 1950s, an extremely important facet of karate, to the extent that many styles taught it first. With the advent of sport karate, it has been neglected, with the consequent loss of focus and effectiveness of technique. As the author has pointed out, 90% of modern karate training is slanted towards competition, while less than 5% of exponents compete. For karate students wishing to develop potent defensive skills, training with equipment is essential.
The Dragon Associates website features everything from fast-breaking news to a martial arts store, information on the latest videos to back issues of Dragon Times and Fighting Arts magazine. For information you can depend on from the best instructors and martial arts writers in the world, visit us on the World Wide Web at www.dragon-tsunami.org. Dragon Associates since 1968. Tsunami martial arts videos are recognized worldwide as the very finest of their kind. Tsunami's dedicated production team has captured, in their most perfect form, the classical schools of karate. In doing so, they have produced a historical resource of enormous value to this and future generations. The best instructors, the best photography and sound, the best writing and research. Tsunami, the best martial arts videos in the world.